Right, we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to OTT Question Time. My name is Kasia and I'm the editor of VOD Professional. This week, we are talking about building a profitable AVOD business, a suitably meaty subject. And joining me on the panel this week are Kasia. Kasia, do you want to
Hi, sorry. Hi, I'm Kasia Jablonska. I'm head of distribution and monetization and Endemol Shine, which is probably, as you know, one of the biggest independent production companies and content distributors in the world. In my role, I work within the digital team and I'm in charge of monetizing Endemol Shine catalog on a revenue share basis.
Thank you. And Simon?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Murray. I'm the principal analyst at Digital TV Research. Digital TV Research produces about 25 reports each year, forecasting out the traditional pay TV industries as well as the OTT and SVOD sectors for 138 countries.
Thank you. And Francesco?
Hello, Francesco Denti. I've been working for about 20 years on content from every possible angle, from programming, commissions, acquisitions, production, promotion, localization. I've been working for Fox Networks Group for 14 years, then for Scripps Networks Interactive, and I'm currently consulting and advising a few different companies. Today I'm here representing Webstars channel, leading Italian MCN, for which I'm a global content advisor.
Thank you very much. Please do start sending your questions in. There's a Q&A panel down at the bottom there, and there's also a chat room where you can share conversations between you, the audience, and also the panelists. We're talking about building a profitable AVOD business. So let's actually first of all start with an understanding of what the market opportunity is. Simon, could you, I mean, you've recently been writing about AVOD and forecasting what the market could look like. Can you give us a sense of the market opportunity from a numbers perspective?
Yeah, sure. Okay, as Kasia said, we've recently produced a global AVOD forecast report covering, again, 138 countries. And we forecast that the market will be worth nearly $54 billion by 2025. And that is double the figure for this year. As you can see from the slide that Kasia's sharing, that's quite a lot of growth. Growth will slow down this year. We're expecting nearly 10% growth around the world this year. Last year, it grew by 15.5%. Next year, expecting to grow by 16%. So there was a slowdown. China is the only country I can think of off the top of my head which actually lost revenues this year, and I'll talk about that a bit later, or maybe I should mention it now. China's figures actually dropped by 9% in 2019. i.e. before the COVID crisis started, due to the economic slowdown in China. This meant that the US regained its crown as the AVOD market leader. And again, China, as you will see, will lose revenues in 2020 as well, as a combination between the economic crisis that's happening in China and the COVID crisis that's hit the country and hit the export market for China as well. So the drop in 2020 is actually going to be greater than 2019 in China. The reason why Chinese market's so big is partly because it's a huge country, but also because until recently, OTT platforms in China have been able to show more liberal content, shall we say, than the heavily censored state broadcasters on the traditional pay TV network. The reason why the US is growing so fast is because there are going to be several launches. There have been several launches, but there are going to be several more launches coming on stream. The US market's going to grow very quickly, we think. And in fact, it will grow from a third of the global market in 2019 to 45% in 2025. I'll probably talk about that a bit later on. There is opportunity there. As I said, the market is growing. Everyone might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, we're being told that overall advertising revenues are falling across the world. Why do you think AVOD is going to grow so much? Yes, overall advertising is falling across the world. TV advertising is falling as well, but online advertising is still growing, maybe at a lower rate. It's the youngest ad medium out there, and of course there have been more and more people watching AVOD related programming during the lockdowns, so that's pushed up advertising. However, of course, the detriment to that is the fact that people can't buy what's advertised, so advertisers have been put off somewhat by what is going on by pushing their products too much during the crisis.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kasia, from your perspective as a representative, obviously, of Endemol Shine, one of the biggest content production companies in the world, what's your reading of the market opportunity for AVOD?
Well, content consumption at the moment is all-time high, and it's just that the consumptions model are really changing. And because of that, also that the value chain within the media industry is changing. Endemol Shine recognized it about 3 years ago, where we set up a digital team along the more traditional content licensing team. The idea was to basically take Endemol Shine catalog and see whether we can supplement the licensed fixed fees by trying to develop some digital revenue share model. We started quite small on YouTube, then on Facebook. Then we moved to the partnership with Amazon. And within that period of 3 years, the growth has been amazing. We've been growing 5-fold. We deliver now revenues close to basically over 8-figure in dollars. And the opportunity is just amazing. And AVOD probably is one of those fastest growing areas, which we are now very much focused on.
Okay, and Francesco, from a TV background perspective, I mean, you've been working in traditional TV for, as you say, almost 20 years. You know, what's your take on AVOD?
Well, of course, you know, AVOD is a very broad definition, as it includes like the YouTube and Facebook Watch, but also the likes of Pluto TV and Tubi and Shumo, and of course the TV manufacturers, Samsung TV Plus and Roku, and then the basic tiers of Peacock and the Hulus and blah, 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 plus the billion local broadcasters, AVOD services, and local independent ones. Having said that, yes, I think AVOD is a very healthy at the moment, and it's the hot thing right now because you know, broadcasters have always liked to play with the hybrid models. You know, the usual holy trinity in the past was a Hollywood studio plus a broadcast network plus a cable business, plus eventually some joint ventures here and there. Nowadays, it's, you know, in the last few months, we've been seeing like at least 3 big broadcasters in the US acquiring an AVOD service. And, you know, the reasons are many, like, first of all, to diversify their offering to and access to new audiences, including the subscription averse younger generations who didn't grow up in the pay TV era. And then, of course, these broadcasters want to broaden to enhance its own direct, their own direct to consumer reach, engagement, and of course, advertising solutions. And of course, they want to take advantage of the AVOD's unique relationship with the TV manufacturers, because one thing is to start your business from scratch. One thing is if your app is already coming pre-installed on many different smart TVs. Yeah. And without forgetting, the key thing is that sometimes AVOD is the AVOD platform is a marketing tool, can be a marketing tool to push pay services. And last probably thing that I can come up with is that sometimes a lot of these broadcasters and big content owners have huge tons of library that are just gathering dust on the shelves. So you can start an AVOD service with 500,000, several thousand hours of content.
Yeah.
At a click.
Talking of that, actually, that's quite a nice segue, because Kasia, Endemol Shine has a catalogue of about 68,000 hours.
That's correct.
And can you tell us about the 4 pillars that you based your AVOD business on that you were telling us about
Yeah.
a few days ago?
So I think the way our digital team is structured is pretty unique. And that's one of the reasons I think we've been so successful. So the 4 pillars we kind of structure around is the commercial team, audience development team, media ops, and then data. All 4 teams are working really closely together and basically understanding sort of each other areas of business and making sure we come together to monetize our catalog. Just to give you a couple of examples, the media ops team, for example, is responsible for re-optimization of content which is already published on AVOD platforms. So they publish a piece of content, they come back several months later, they take this content off, update the artwork, update metadata, put it back on. We know roughly, we've got roughly commercial targets, how much money we want to generate from this re-optimization, and that's the target for media ops team. Audience development team actually has developed in a way like a commercial forecast for any new titles which we would like to avail on the AVOD platform. So when we go to a producers, we are able to go with a case study and pitch and give them a rough idea how much we think their titles will be making on per platform on an annual basis. And then we also work really closely with data. We, as much as we can, we try to get API access to all the platforms we're working with to understand how our content performs. And we are developing so-called performance curve on the title, on the platforms level, just to be able to understand the trends and again, use it to forecast how each title will perform in a given year.
Which platforms do you sell your content to? Well, sorry, I say sell your content to. I mean,
we publish. We at the moment, I think we are on over 20 platforms. I would say roughly about 25.
Right.
It's been a really busy end of last year and early this year. So we work with all the major US platforms like Pluto, Tubi, Roku, Samsung TV. This week, actually, last week, we launched on Vizio, we are on Zumo. I would say those are the sort of key ones we're working with. Also Kidoodle, a kids platform. Then in Europe, we also have a partnership with Pluto, Samsung, My5 in UK, and then we work with 7 Plus and 10 Play in Australia. And those, I would say, that the key sort of partner we work with.
YouTube, Facebook.
And obviously, sorry, Amazon, even though it's not an IMDb TV, sorry.
the YouTube, Facebook, Amazon PVD.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. Simon, can you tell us about, actually, this is where you can talk about some of the platforms that have launched already and some of the new platforms that are going to launch that you talked about in your intro.
I'll concentrate on some of the ones that some of the big ones. I think if we look in the States, I think I should say before I say all of this that what's happening in the States might not necessarily be replicated elsewhere. The choice that you have in the States is huge, and I don't necessarily think that all of the platforms that have launched in the States will launch internationally, and I don't think local platforms in say European countries will necessarily launch to the same degree. But anyway, in the States, I think a lot of people look at Hulu as the sort of shining example of how AVOD can work. And Hulu's AVOD revenues are somewhere in between $1.5 to $2 billion a year. Then, of course, on top of that, they have subscription fees. Now, the structure of Hulu, for those who don't know, is you pay approximately $5 a month to receive Hulu with ads, or you can pay approximately $10 to receive it without ads. Okay, Hulu has about 30 million subscribers, which is huge. Hulu's also had a change in ownership in recent years. Obviously, Disney bought Fox, and so the Disney Fox conglomerate took a majority share in Hulu. Comcast, NBC Universal owns about 1/3 of it, but they have the option to sell that 1/3 of it. So Comcast still has its content on Hulu until about 2024, although I understand it can run down some of those shows as time goes on. So what's happening in the States is we have seen a soft launch of Peacock, which is the Comcast brand, the NBC Universal brand, on Comcast cable networks in the States. I do feel a bit sorry for Peacock because, as we know, NBC Universal has a lot of sports rights, including the Tokyo Olympics, and they were going to do their big US launch in July. Just in time for the Olympics starting. Unfortunately, as we all know, the Olympics has been postponed until July next year. So they're still going ahead and they're still pushing on. So some of their sports won't be happening, obviously. I think a lot of professional leagues will start again in August, September time. But the missing Olympics is really unfortunate for them. Also, some of their shows have contractual obligation to other platforms and they can't get their hands on them immediately, or they have to share them with other platforms. And some of their shows include The Office and Seinfeld and Parks and Rec and things like that. Very recently, the newly merged Viacom CBS announced that it's going to beef up its CBS All Access service in the States to include some of the other properties of the group, including MTV, BET, Nickelodeon, etc., and some Paramount movies. So they've had some success in the States with CBS All Access, and the most recent figures are 13.5 million subscribers to CBS All Access and Showtime. These are OTT subscribers. So most of these services are based on the same sort of model as Hulu, a lower price for an ad-supported service and a higher price for an ad-free service. And I think that might be replicated elsewhere.
Is there any data about what the split is?
For what, sorry?
For Hulu and CBS and all the others, that, is it 80% are taking adverts and paying the lesser amount and 20% are buying full subscriptions and not watching any ads?
Okay, I'm going to quote some figures without knowing what the source is, but here we go. I seem to remember reading something I seem to remember something like 2/3 of the subscribers take the expensive package. It's just for Hulu. 2/3 of subscribers take the expensive package.
They take the ad-free version?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yep.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
So only 1/3 want to pay the lower amount but watch adverts. So there's a real push against adverts there then?
Well, it's reasonably cheap in the States if you compare it against pay TV subscriptions. I think the comparison isn't necessarily valid in Europe, in a lot of European countries, but it's still reasonably cheap. And as we know, people are cord cutting like there's no tomorrow in the States. So you can get a lot of stuff for that $10.
Francesco, is there a sense? Do you have any idea about, is there a sort of cultural difference about wanting to view ads versus subscriptions? Actually, and the same question to Kasia and Simon as well, but Francesco, if you kick us off, if you've got any knowledge of that.
I'm not sure I understand your question. I mean,
so for example, I heard years ago, I remember going to the Nordic Media Summit in Copenhagen, and we were talking about the difference we were talking about SVOD uptake versus AVOD. And somebody told me that the Danes have a real thing about not wanting to watch adverts, and so that's why SVOD was very successful there. I don't know the veracity of this, by the way, and I have no data to prove it. But
sorry, Francesco.
No, I don't have any data either. I think that, of course, civilized countries without piracy might be willing to pay for an ad-free version because they're not used to have it, without paying. While other countries or territories, markets, I'm from Italy and I've been living for 9 years in the Middle East, which is, piracy and piracy plus, if you allow me. And it's always been difficult to get anything assuming some cost, because people are so used to get it for free or for very cheap with, cracked version. And so that might be possibly, a key differentiator, but honestly speaking, I have no data.
I can say in the States. Oh, sorry, Kasia, you go.
Sorry if it's just briefly, because actually I do take a slightly different view. I think in a way it all started with SVOD. People got used to their SVOD platform, the Netflix, the Amazon, Hulu, but like with everything else, subscriptions are stacking up. So after a while, you just don't really want to start adding more SVOD platforms to the mix. But at the same time, the content consumption is so fast, so high. People want to watch fresh content all the time. And this is where the AVOD platforms are coming in. This additional boost to the SVOD, where you don't have to pay extra subscription, you get access to content. And I remember, weirdly enough, reading somewhere that apparently the viewing tolerance for ads on OTT is about, like, of viewers basically tolerate about 8 minutes per hour, 7.5, 8 minutes per hour of ad sales on ads on OTT, versus about 6 minutes per hour on linear channels. Right. So to me,
that's interesting, because is it Channel 4 you're allowed to have 3 5-minute ad breaks per hour?
I think it's probably the US sort of base stats. Okay. I think.
Yeah. And in the US, one of the new services, I think it's Peacock, is one of its sales factors is the fact they're keeping adverts down to 5 minutes an hour, which is in the States, and also because Italy is quite low. But also some of the platforms in the States stress the fact that they don't have ad breaks during films.
Right. Okay. Actually, I remember watching Braveheart in a hotel in New York in about 2006. I don't know why this comes to mind, but it was like almost the last scene, and they went for an ad break. Yeah, and I was like, what the hell is this? Yeah,
that was criminal.
Yeah, no, it was like bonkers. Yeah, there's like actually 2 minutes of the movie left, and they go for an advertising break. Platforms, Francesco. I mean, you're advising a multi-channel network.
Yes.
Yeah, can you first of all tell us what an MCN is, and what the Webstars channel does in particular?
Right, sure. Well, so an MCN in general is a company managing the relationship between the creators, who are the YouTubers originally, and now, of course, the creators on other platforms such as Twitch or TikTok or Instagram, IGTV, etc. To be honest, as far as I know, as far as I hear, most MCNs are not doing much more than that. But of course, there are some who are really investing on their creators, and certainly the company I'm advising, Webstar Channels, and its own MCN, which is called the Grow Up Network, has been doing a lot for these creators, funding the first academy, so training these creators and giving them the tools and let's say the grammar, the instruments to really kick ass and produce a great content, good quality content, while keeping the cost low and manageable, and introducing them to brands, to, basically, a digital company such as Webstars Channel is a company that understands and somehow intercepts the language that the younger demographic speaks and communicates with. And social media is the environment where these people communicate. And therefore, all these people are the ideal target for most companies who cannot reach them via the more traditional media. Webstars Channels and, of course, other MCNs are...
Go on, Francesco.
No.
I was just going to say, and it's monetized via AVOD, because that content is shared to YouTube and Facebook.
Of course. Not only it's of course it starts on YouTube, but once you do your job properly as an MCN and you really make a brand out of your creator, you can then enjoy the syndication and basically sell that content. For example, you have a YouTuber who is talking about video games. You sell 100 episodes related to video games to a digital platform that is interested to buy that, or you have a food series and you sell that to I don't know, the website of a newspaper, or you have anything about cars or sports or toys or anything, just anything. And of course, this is just the first step, because then you have the licensing and you have like a billion other opportunities. If you are good at your job,
yeah,
you can really enjoy nice profit margins,
rewards. Is there an opportunity for broadcasters to work more closely with MCNs?
Yes, absolutely. And that's actually the main reason why I started to work with Webstars channel, because I don't want to say that they've been hitting the ceiling, because they have not in Italy, but they've been really doing well in Italy, managing these YouTubers and creators in general, and maximizing and optimizing the business opportunities across many different ways. But now what is the next step is to try and tap into international content, which is where I come from. So basically I'm there to help them to identify hot properties from the US, from Japan, from elsewhere, that are currently available online, YouTube or other platforms, but they're only available in their original version, so in English or in a different language. Then we have to work out a deal with this media company that owns the rights, and then invest in localization and promotion by translating metadata, subtitling the content, cutting out short segments that will be used to promote the longer episodes, but also to be, as separate monetizable items.
Yeah.
And then going for direct ad sales of pre-rolls, mid-rolls, rather than sticking to the standard Google AdSense revenues that the content owners would still get from YouTube. And once you create this awareness with the original content, but subtitled and adapted for Italy, you start, and basically you have introduced a new brand in your own country, and it's time to develop your own local version of this content starring local talent. It's still a version for the web, and it will probably do well because you have been building a community, and you have been feeding this community with the original first. And once you have that, the new brand is strong, and even in your country, people talk about this property, it's time to upgrade it. So you can add a few elements that are typical of the traditional TV, like a proper studio, celebrity guests, quiz, I don't know, any elements, any traditional elements of a broadcast show. Yeah. And at that point, you sell it to the broadcaster. So it will not be the content owner, but it's you, because it's thanks to you if now that content is so appealing for the broadcaster in your own country. So of course, the key is to work out a deal where everyone is winning. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, and it will not happen. And it's honestly something we just started to do, but it seems to be working very well. So we are very confident in what the future has in store for us in the coming months. And
you gave us a great example, which we're not allowed to talk about here, but it will launch in a few months' time, as you told us in our call a couple of days ago. Yeah. We've had a bunch of questions through. There were 6 questions actually, so I'm going to go to questions faster than I normally would, because normally I hog all the questions. Kasia, just before we do that though, can we just go back to the sort of the 4 pillars that you're using at Endemol Shine and the 68,000 hour catalog as well? The big question that I omitted to ask you at that point was, are you making money? Yeah, and if so, how much? Yeah.
Well, obviously I can't really discuss the details, but yeah, we are, it's probably at the moment the most profitable division within the whole group. So yes, we are making money.
Right.
And we are making money very fast.
Right, good, because that then gets us to the next, to the first audience question. So we've got a question from Stephanie Morris, forgive me, I'm looking over there because that's where the other monitor is. Yeah, I know it's not particularly good for webinars. She asks, for the content owners, is AVOD a threat to traditional program licensing business?
So if I can maybe start, I wouldn't say so. I think it's just, as I said, you know, the viewing models have changed. The industry has to adapt to it. And it's more about just reviewing your rights windowing strategy and adjusting it. The first window, the most kind of profitable big window, is still there. It's not really possible to, you know, it's still quite sort of big and profitable, and everybody wants to see the content for the, you know, first time. However, when you look at the catalog, over time, the value of the catalog was declining faster and faster and faster, and it was more difficult to sell it and generate good money for the older seasons. AVOD actually now gives you this opportunity of looking basically at how much you would be able to make from this title if you licensed it, and how much you can actually make from this title if you put it on one of the AVOD platforms. So it's just about understanding those values and making sure that you basically track the performance and learn from it.
And so you have just to be clear about that, so you have a model that informs that decision making inside.
Yeah, very much. We have a yield management function. We work with the business analysts who help us understand how much we can make on the AVOD basis, on the rev share basis, versus how much we would make if we just licensed it exclusively.
Just to carry on that question, Francesco, we kind of talked about this again in our call the other day, but what are the differences between the sort of linear metrics that you might use versus the AVOD metrics?
Well, of course, it's a bit talking about analog versus digital, because while with the digital platforms, you understand so many key details, this is all luxury for us coming from the old world, where it was, of course, key to know the performance in the US and or in any other relevant market, to understand the marketing spend, whether it was like own marketing spend from the network or from the platform in case of pay TV channels, and of course PR opportunities. And of course it was a great thing to have something that was like date with the US, and so many things that sound so old nowadays, I have to admit. Of course, the metrics are still there for linear viewing. It's very important, and we keep complaining about even the most sophisticated people meters, because you're supposed to do a lot of things, because you need to let the meter know whether you're watching this thing by yourself, with your partner, with your kids, and all of those options, while unfortunately most of the people apparently leave the meter as it is, and they don't really care to, I mean, at least not all of them care to do this, click these buttons every time. But still, there are territories, for example, as I was saying, I've been staying in the Middle East for 9 years, and over there, the free-to-air channels are not even monitored by a people meter. There is a system based on day after recall, and that is obviously, even assuming the good faith, which is not necessarily the case, it's at least unreliable, because you get a lot of, I can't even remember what I did 5 minutes ago. What can I remember about what I watched last night? And was it really last night? Was it 2 days ago? I don't know. Yeah. And then, of course, even being like a slightly conservative market, sometimes you don't know, is this research company connected somehow to the government? I just want to play safe. I don't necessarily want to let them know what I've been watching.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Simon, a question for you from Matt Rothman from Hemisphere Capital, I think, Matt. Simon, are there key AVOD platforms driving this trend? What was this trend?
Oh, okay. I think he might be referring to forecasts for US AVOD growth. The short answer is yes. That's where we see a lot of the growth coming from, these new markets. one of the unanswered questions is how many of them will launch abroad, and Hulu. Disney has talked about Hulu launching abroad, and even Viacom CBS has talked about going abroad as well to key markets. I think launching. I don't think these platforms are going to launch onto the scale of countries that Netflix and Amazon have launched onto, but it is attractive for them to do so. And I think there is a bit of a conflict of who owns the rights in which country, but then Netflix has sort of circumnavigated that and done very well out of it. So you can still have quite a good catalogue of content when you're sending it abroad. Of course, the question is how much new stuff you put on and when you can put the new stuff on as well to make it very attractive. The other big challenge to these companies abroad is advertising sales, and the global advertising market, if you like, is very small. But of course, a lot of these companies that I've mentioned have well-established ad teams in their various offices, and they have to sell for their channels, and so they already have the infrastructure in place. All they need to is expand it onto a platform. So I think that we might see one or two of them launching abroad in the future.
Okay, we have an anonymous question. If a company starts a new AVOD platform, which alliance do you think is best, media, agency, or broadcaster, or others? Kasia, I guess this is one for you.
I'm guessing that the question is regarding what's the best way of making money, of getting up. So again, I think I would follow up to what Simon is saying. There's probably US and there's probably rest of the world. I would say US is already extremely well developed in that sphere. So it's in US, probably it's the easiest way is just to work through the programmatic ad exchanges and just to kind of start going very quickly. Rest of the world, at this moment, I would say you still need a major media agency to help you to kind of, as Simon was saying, media agency that already has budgets, that already has the workflows of ad sales people. Because the programmatic market, it's not here yet, and the advertisers are still not really following the eyeballs.
Following that question as well, this is one that came through from Andrea Paoletti earlier, and he sent a couple of questions through, and one of those questions was about scale. Yeah, and I mean, you guys have a 68,000 hour catalog. Is there a minimum amount that you need to have, a minimum amount of content that you need to have to get started in terms of building a profitable AVOD?
I think it all depends on the content. In a way, we were quite lucky. I think we started probably with about 300 to 500 hours, just kind of, I'm talking about OTT platforms, about streamers, just dipping a toe to see how it goes. And we were lucky because the titles we picked up were actually evergreen titles. So one of our biggest IPs, Mr. Bean, and that title, when we first started, 3 years down the line, and it still is making very big, significant, regular amounts of money. So I think it's a right combination of volume, but also not exactly quality, but I think, well, quality as well, but obviously the brand being recognized and the brand to be liked, and this evergreen quality of the IP.
So you can start with something as small as 300 to 500 hours, depending on the quality of the content. Mr. Bean, by the way, am I right in thinking that's the biggest show on YouTube, and it overtook The Simpsons a few years ago?
Yes, we have one of the biggest. Yeah, we have the biggest channel on YouTube at the moment. Don't ask me about the numbers, I should have checked, but it definitely goes into millions of viewers.
Right, okay. And I guess Mr. Bean isn't just evergreen, but it's sort of completely transnational because there's no dialogue.
Yeah, it's really easy to kind of just to pretty much go to every market. Yeah. Surprisingly, it's not doing as well in US as it's doing in the rest of the world. Apparently, it's a different type of comedy that US is used to. But Exactly, it's just a very easy title to distribute, and it just generates followers pretty much wherever it goes.
I think we found the key. Yeah, just make content, without any dialogue, and then there's no barrier to entry anywhere in the world.
That always works. That always works. Sometimes when I was acquiring content for linear channels, even now for platforms, if I need cheap content because it's either a newborn platform or like simply a channel that doesn't really have a lot of budget, and if the dubbing cost is more than acquisition cost, of course it doesn't make any sense. And I want to find some really cheap content sometimes, but if I have to dub it, unfortunately, it's a no-go.
Right. Okay, so I wasn't being completely flippant then in that.
Absolutely no, absolutely not.
Right.
Of course, especially if you're targeting like preschoolers, sometimes it's easier to find this no dialogue content. Sometimes it might be a bit more difficult because fine, one episode I can invent something, but then the whole series or a movie with no dialogues might be boring.
Right. Simon, we've got a question that this might be for you, but I think Kasia as well, this is for you also. Again, anonymous. Can you talk about the big difference in ad rates around the world? So AVOD services may be profitable in the US due to higher CPMs, but not profitable in LATAM because of lower ad rates. CDN rates are also usually higher in the non-US territories, so costs are higher and revenues can be lower outside the US. Kasia, can you talk to that bit about the CDN part of it?
Yes.
Technology costs.
I can definitely talk a bit. So as I've mentioned, what we are trying to do is find a sort of go-through platforms where we can deliver our content in one go on one platform in one format, and that way basically keep our costs under control. We've succeeded in most of the cases. For example, where we develop our channels, we work with a platform called Whirl, which probably a lot of you've heard. Similar platform is a Maggie, for example. Those platforms just effectively allow you to build channels of them, and then they deliver this channel, one channel to multiple platforms, and that way we actually manage our CDN costs. The other element, sort of the CPMs, again, it's exactly to what I was saying, that US is probably a market on its own when it comes to monetization of AVOD. In the rest of the world, you do still need the big media agencies. We actually already have relationship with advertisers. They're able to pre-lock budgets, negotiate on your behalf, and then basically, in a way, even apportion this budget to you based on your performance. And I think weirdly enough, this kind of relationship it still relies on your performance, but it's more a sort of direct relationship where you still go out and negotiate those CPMs with the advertisers. So there is a bit of a leeway in terms of what's on the level of CPM. But I would say if you want to go on your own at this stage, it's still very difficult.
Right. Simon, anything on CPMs?
Yeah, I don't think I can add much. I think Kasia put it really well.
Okay. Another anonymous question. There are still questions coming through here. Wow, it's gone to 14 now, so I better start cracking through. Right. So, if a company starts a new AVOD platform, which do you? No, I've already asked that one. Right, so we can dump that. What is your view with AVOD start to monetize on non-video based advertisement, e.g., Hulu's pause ad? I don't quite understand that question. If that questioner would like to send that question in again, I'll just go to the next one. What's the opportunity for content producers in AVOD beyond catalog exploitation? I guess what they're asking is, could you create content specifically for AVOD and not for broadcast at all?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think some of those big players I mentioned in the States are actually showcasing the fact that they are going to produce some original content. Brave New World being the most touted one. I think that's on Peacock, if I remember right. I hope I haven't got that wrong. I think it's on Peacock. This is one of the big arguments that's been going on in Europe, really, hasn't it? Between with BritBox and Salto in France, you're asking competitors to work together.
Yeah.
how much original content or pre-broadcast content are they going to want to sacrifice on a platform that could possibly help their competitors? You know, it's quite a thorny issue, I think.
Yeah, and that's always been a fascinating convergence. Divergence, sorry, between the US and the UK models, because everybody sort of piled in there and did Hulu together, and they did go cooperative. Yeah, and over here we tried with Canvas and then Kangaroo. Was it that way around? Yeah, Canvas, Kangaroo, and then eventually, and Canvas was 2006. I remember hearing about it. And BritBox finally started last year. So it's been interesting that the models have sort of crossed in the middle and now started diverging again, because in the States, the broadcasters are starting to go D2C. Yeah, whereas here, it looks like, in theory at least, that we're starting to come together because of.
I don't know if all of them will survive, Kasia, even in the States. I think we might see some alliances in the future.
Yeah. Well, somebody asks actually, Rami Nasser, do you think European broadcasters can replicate Hulu to create a true alliance to become a European Hulu? I almost read that in a Star Wars voice. I don't think they're lights. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? On whether we could have a Hulu in Europe? Is it too late for that now? I mean, RTL AdConnect. I mean, RTL is working together with ProSiebenSat in Germany.
No, sorry. There were. I think RTL's going it alone.
Right.
ProSiebenSat.1 is going together with Discovery, with the joint platform.
Okay, right. So, any prospects for a European Hulu? No, I'm going to say no. Yeah.
I mean, I think Hulu might launch in some European countries. I think Disney needs a sort of adult companion to enhance its offer in the same way that it has in the States.
When you say an adult companion, you don't.
We're not going back to that one. No, I mean to attract adult viewers. I think because
basically.
Sorry, Francesco.
For the effects shows that most of them are just too edgy for Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Disney Plus is family,
Pranab Kapadia, who used to be at Eros International, the bigger Indian film studio, I think Bollywood. It is. Are CPM rates higher in terms of niche content, like say Bollywood, since they target a specific diaspora, even though their viewership numbers will be much lower compared to mainstream content? Kasia?
And again, I would say that is a very tough question, because again, it goes sort of market by market.
Yeah.
And I would say, with the US, again, supply and demand, if there is a lot of Indian Bollywood content already on the platforms, it probably, the cost will be going lower on the programmatic basis. And again, outside where you still negotiate pricing through media agencies.
Yeah.
As a niche content, probably the on average CPM would be slightly higher because of the kind of the premium quality, the niche quality of that content. But at the same time, you would still then question is, who are you going to share that revenue with? Who else is on that platform to split it with? So that's a tough one, really difficult to answer. It's more a case by case basis, I would say.
Maybe Pranab can give us his experience at some point in the future. I'll ask him about it separately. We are over time, but I'm going to ask one more question, which is from Inga Alika Stroder. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Can AVOD platforms be good to pull in traffic to further SVOD services if integrated together in one platform? I think the question is asking that what's the sort of translation, the crossover from AVOD to becoming an SVOD customer if both of those options are offered by the same service.
From the basic tier to the premium tier.
Yeah. What do you think, Francesco? Anything on this?
I mean, I think that this is as I was saying before, this is one of the bets that these US broadcasters are making, and one of the reasons why they want to. They have been acquiring AVOD platforms because they will use them as a marketing, push for their premium services. This is they need it. Sometimes you have to start with AVOD and hopefully some of your consumers will upgrade their subscription.
Yeah. So is AVOD a gateway to SVOD? Yeah. Kasia, is Endemol Shine planning an SVOD service?
I think at this stage we're quite happy with the sort of revenue with the PVD, with the consumption-based models, and AVOD. I don't think we want to, no plans to basically launch SVOD service. But I think in a way I do agree with Francesco that AVOD maybe is a gateway to premium upgrade, but not only to SVOD. You have quite a few players who are then bundling all of this with gaming, with music. So I think it's more about sort of creating this bigger content entertainment aggregator, which AVOD is a kind of a gateway to convince people to pay a subscription and then get access to all the other products.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about, by the way, about content aggregators in a couple of weeks' time. Simon, last word to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do agree. If I wanted to play devil's advocate, I could say it's quite hard to convince people who aren't, on the face of it, paying for something to pay for something later.
Yeah.
You have to prove your premium chops, if you like. You know, the premium programming has to be that much better than what people are seeing for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I do remember there was a service that I was testing, and suddenly, they had an SVOD service, but suddenly they seemed to add more adverts into their AVOD service, which diminished the experience. I'm sure they weren't doing it on purpose. It just felt like actually there was a path to going to pay for a subscription, because the user experience wasn't as good in the AVOD version.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this is a deliberate ploy, but I mean, Spotify's ad service has very annoying adverts that force you to take the premium service just to get away from the adverts.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right. I want to say thank you very much to everybody, to the audience, for all your brilliant questions. By the way, we've never had so many questions before, so this was a new experience for me, reading and moderating at the same time. Thank you to the panel, to Kasia, to Francesco, and to Simon. As I say, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be talking about content aggregation. Next week's panel could be this, and it could be that, and I'm still trying to figure out which one we're going to host next week. Anyway, thank you very much. This video will be available next week on the For Professional website. Thanks.